My name is Jackie Danziger. I'm the VP of Partnerships and Productions over at Lemonada Media. We are an award-winning podcast network behind hit shows like Wiser Than Me with Julia Louis-Dreyfus. And we were founded in 2019 by Stephanie Whittles-Wax and Jessica Cordova-Kramer, who were strangers who shared a story. Both of them had lost a brother to an opioid overdose. Fate brought them together. They decided to start their first podcast centered around a question: what could they have done to save their brothers' lives? That's where I got to meet them. I joined them to produce that first series. And in doing so, we talked about policy, we talked about treatment, but we never strayed away from their personal lived experience. That was really what drove the narrative, and it's what people responded to. When that show came out, we were flooded with messages from people saying, "Thank you so much for talking about this. I felt completely alone." That show led to what is now our network of over 60 shows. We have over 50 employees. And our mission statement is to make life suck less. And that's different than saying we're going to make life not suck. We're not that powerful. Things are hard, but we can try to make the hard a little bit easier by talking about it, trying to connect with people who are doing great work, trying to give those people a megaphone and a platform. And a lot of that is through our partnerships and working with incredible people like the ones I'm talking to today. So passing it over to you, can you each introduce yourself, tell us a little bit about your work and how you came to that work? Maybe Erika, you could start.
Awesome, thank you, and hello everyone. It's a real honor to be here. Thank you to Northwell for inviting us and for making time for this really important conversation. I am a vice president of social impact strategy at Paramount for a group of brands at Paramount, including MTV, Showtime, Comedy Central, CMT, probably a lot of the brands that you grew up with watching on cable and now hopefully watch on your streamers. And what I do there is really engage our audience across these really diverse channels and shows on the most pressing and urgent social issues. Try to get them to think differently, try to get them to take action. And so I know we'll talk about those audiences and the ways that we do that across social issues, but I really credit where I am now and my journey, the evolution of the work that I do today to the work that I did in the gun violence prevention movement. I was part of the founding team at Everytown for Gun Safety and Moms Demand Action. And, prior to that, my career had been, in politics and public affairs. And I really saw firsthand in the building of that organization how much we were able to get people's attention and grow our work in partnership with cultural influencers. One quick example of that, and so many of you in this room have been doing this work for much longer than I have, since before Sandy Hook, but I think we all recognize that that event was really a lightning rod moment in which many more people kind of woke up, although they should have been awake to what was happening in communities every day before then, to the lack of safety for in our country. And when that occurred, we had the great benefit of having people call us and say, what can we do? And some of those people, and more money coming in, more people signing up, more people taking action in all of the ways that's necessary. And one of those ways was A-listers calling and saying, okay, I'm ready to use my voice. And it's unfortunate that it takes crises to get those phones ringing and the emails coming in. But when that happened, we rented 2 sound stages, one in LA, one in New York, and wrote a script. And within a week of the Sandy Hook shooting, we released a video that I call it the Beyonce video. There are like 30 other A-list stars of that time across athletes, actors, comedians in it, but Beyonce was the thumbnail that I chose, so that when you go to see it, of course she's Beyonce, and they're using their voice in a way that I think when we watch it now, it's quite unsophisticated. Like that, this work of culture has really evolved a lot beyond the direct to camera celebrity video that now would get you mocked. But that was just a groundswell moment of the right message, the right messengers and how we began to build, continue to build a movement of people to say enough and to demand change. So I'm really proud of that. We did that with Steph Curry when he spoke about the experience of just getting to Oracle Arena and his own, many athletes. When Kim Kardashian became somebody whose life was confronted by gun violence and she tweeted about background checks, way more people understood why we need common sense reforms like background checks. So that really led me into how can we be partnering more with culture leaders to talk about pressing social issues and find ways to engage people to take action on them.
I'm going to start with thank you. Thank you to Michael Dowling. Thank you to Northwell. I've been coming for a couple of years, and to be a part of this conversation, the continuity is important. And what this forum represents is a movement of continuity. This is a marathon, not a sprint, so I really want to take time just to thank Northwell for continuing to bring this powerful collective together. I have the distinct honor and privilege of serving as the head of programs and partnerships for our National Basketball Social Justice Coalition. And the coalition serves as the policy advocacy arm of the NBA community that was established in 2020 in the wake of a lot of tragedy, right? The murder of George Floyd, on the heels of the murder of Breonna Taylor. Far too many for us to even note, given the time that we have left here. And we had the confluence of COVID. And so on the heels of that, and the efforts that the players within our community, I see some who were part of the movement and the work, there was a clear move and quite frankly, a call to establish the coalition, which was really, we sit on and we stand on the shoulders of the many social justice advocates within our NBA community. We have the Oscar Robinsons of the world. We have Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, right? The Bill Russells. And so this was to institutionalize our work. I am thoughtful about what we represent as the policy advocacy arm. We actually serve as a joint venture. So this call to establish the coalition was a call between players, our Players Association, Coaches Association, and the league, and that's who we represent. So we represent the NBA community. And our issue areas include community safety, but the breadth of the issue areas are criminal justice reform, policing reform, and voting rights, all of which there's a tie that binds all of our priority areas. And so as I sit and I'm listening to the conversations this morning, really incredibly important conversations, it just helps me to continue to think about the role that we play. Each of us, and I'm gonna throw some analogy, we talked about Pastor Mike is always great with dropping the mic, but I'm gonna try to pick it up and think about and share, like we have a role to play. This is, if we think about a team sport, our role is how we use our platform in this moment to elevate the issues that matter. We are a bridge. Part of the power of sports, and certainly part of the power of basketball, is how we can bring folks together. And bringing folks together, we've heard the stats in terms of, quite frankly, some unanimity with respect to how we feel and how we think about the issue of gun violence. And from where we sit, our frame is community safety, right? How we really feel and think about that. And I come to this work, lastly, having led a criminal justice agency in DC, did that for 12 years. Many in this room I've worked with, actually working to establish our problem analysis with the National Institute of Criminal Justice Reform. So delving deep and doing the work, understanding that it's a public health issue, right? And so having now had the opportunity to sit in this seat, working on the ground, and also working with my counterparts across the country, really feels like I'm right at home as we're having these conversations. And lastly, I'll note, the power of basketball really allows us to dream. So this notion of being hopeful, I understand, I'm clear about our moment, the moment. but it is incredibly important. As I think about the games, and I don't know, I'm going to ask you to raise your hand. How many of you guys are into basketball a little bit in here? All right, even if you're not, raise your hand. Okay, let's do that. All right. What that does is, though, like, we want to be able to lean in and wrap our arms around hope and something that gives us energy. And even if it's a couple of hours to sit back and enjoy a game, and I may be for Team X and you may be for Team Y, and we're rooting, right? Oh, I'm hearing some teams now. I got you going. The bottom line is that there is a tie that binds us when we come, because we want to be able to see success. We want to see our team successful. And we know how to be opponents. We really do, in a way that's constructive. So more to come, but I really am thrilled to share a bit more about the work of the coalition as it pertains to community safety.
So I think talking about teams is a good segue to talking about audience. You know, do you think about it as just your audience? Do you break that into pieces? How does the message change depending on what part of your audience you're talking to?
Yeah, that's a great question. And, you know, the audience that we think about, that I bring into my mind each day, really depends on what the opportunity is. So, as I mentioned, I work across networks as diverse as MTV to CMT. And shows like Yellowstone, the issue that we may be discussing with that audience now, hit show, the work that we did with them in season 1 was really like, well, first I need to understand where they are, what they think, and what social issue I might be able to bring into the conversation with them that will, you know, first and foremost, do no harm. You know, people are coming to us to relax, to be entertained. It is in some ways a passive experience when we watch our shows and our films. But I want to figure out a way to reach them on something where we can find common ground. And I discovered that, you know, climate, they're watching this show with beautiful landscapes. That is a space, and it was during a time when, and still, you know, there's doubts about climate change being real, but if I can work with the cast and real people who work at Yellowstone National Park to explain the changes that are seen in the flora and fauna, then maybe we can start there with a common sense conversation. It's very different than when I work with RuPaul's Drag Race and how I can I love doing work with that show and how we can work together to get the audience to work against drag bans. Or The Daily Show, a highly engaged audience. How do we get that audience to sign up to be poll workers during the depths of COVID and make sure that we had safe elections in 2020, which despite everything else we did, and continue to have a new generation of people involved in civics through that show. So it really varies, but I will say that the opportunities that I get most excited about are our youngest audiences. And that's really another. I neglected to note that in addition to, you know, my past work in the GVP space and the work that I do now, all the opportunities that I try to find, I'm also a board member of a still relatively new organization called Project Unloaded, been mentioned a couple of times here. If you don't know Nina Vinnick, she's here in the room. Wave, Nina. You should make sure you get to know her. And I decided to join that board because I truly believe that they are doing the most innovative and interesting work in culture that is not bound to all of the other things that we still have to do, like politics and policy and community violence intervention. Like all of that, this is all to say yes but I think when that culture work, and frankly work that I did previously in my past organization, it was culture work in service of a political objective or a policy objective. And that's still necessary, but I really love being able to do work that is culture for culture's sake, because we are all consumers of culture. Whatever we eat, watch, drink, listen to, sports, like we are all a part of culture. And I see the work that they're doing really focused on young people. Not to say that we're old dogs and can't learn new tricks, but to really hone in on young people who haven't made up their minds yet about the role that guns will play in their lives, and to really broadcast the message that guns do not make us safer. So even as we are doing work to encourage safe storage and the political horse trading that Governor Christie explained so well, we need to be doing work that inserts the idea that we should have less guns. And I really appreciate that. They launched an initiative earlier this week that meets their audience where they are through video gaming. It's called Leave Guns in the Game. And it's in partnership with Gen Z gaming influencers that have millions of young people watching them. I'm also a mom of a teen and a tween, and I know, even as I wish they had less screen time, video games are good for your mental health, or can be. You can connect with your friends, and but also a lot of those video games are, first-person shooter or violent. And I think it's really powerful to hear some of these Gen Z gaming influencers who young people listen to anyways talk about leaving guns in the game. And so I really want to credit these innovative ways to reach young people with new messages that I think are a part of this big puzzle that we all hold a piece of.
So when I think about audience and awareness, I'm going to start with what our formula is, right? So our advocacy formula is awareness plus action equals impact, right? We want to play our part. We appreciate the megaphone. We appreciate the platform that the NBA community has. And we also want to be smart about it. Each market, we have 30 teams in 28 markets, right? And so while we appreciate the national landscape, we also want to be really smart and thoughtful about what's happening at the state and local levels. And so partnering with teams on, and to tell the story, because we're in the storytelling business, to tell a story in a way that really resonates in markets is also really important when we think about our audiences. We just, came back, and I know a few folks here were with us at All-Star Weekend in San Francisco, right? There was, and I actually had the privilege of attending a session that Pastor Mike, Live Free, and the National Institute of Criminal Justice Reform put on with an eye towards elevating those organizations in the Bay Area focused on all things criminal justice reform, but with a focus on gun safety, gun violence prevention, community safety. And to be in that room at that moment was so important. And again, I had the privilege of participating in it. They were the ones who made it happen. So I think it's important also to shine a light on the organizations on the ground who are doing the work. That's part of our work. That's part of our principle. We understand our platform, we understand our frame and our policies, but we also understand, and this comes from kind of the depths of our soul, it is really connecting with the organizations who know the root causes, the root issues, and then who know the solutions, because we hear this, right? Those who are closest to the problem, right, are the best to actually address the solution. And so for us, we want to be the right partners and to be smart about how we're connecting the dots with organizations on the ground. So when we talk about audience, we use our convening power with organizations and community. In DC, again, home base for me, partnered with Monumental Sports and Entertainment, the Washington Wizards, and the Mystics to convene a forum on community safety. We had players from both teams participate, but alongside mothers who lost their sons to gun violence, alongside organizations who were providing trauma services to the families. And we appreciate that the light and the media that convening brought to bear, right? So again, it's leaning into what we know we can do from our platform. But also we are looking at policies. Again, we're the policy advocacy arm of the NBA community, so we're a 501c4. Right? So we are looking at policies in markets. Community violence intervention is one that we appreciate the best practices that it offers and the proven practices that are true to form when we talk about the organizations that came together and have been doing this. It wasn't just over the last 4 years. Let's be really clear. This has been going on. The work that's been done and the organizations that have been at the seat doing the work have been in play for a long time. And so really for us, it's always about being smart about the organizations that are doing the work in community so that we are then the value add when we think about these activations. But on the advocacy front, we're looking at measures in our markets. I think there are, maybe 11 measures that are front and center. A few of them have been reintroduced as legislative sessions have reconvened. And so we're monitoring that and then figuring out how we can work in concert with organizations on the ground, with our partners across the MBA community to lend the support that's going to be helpful and important. The last thing I'll note with that in terms of our audience is the power of social media, right? And so we know that we have an opportunity to get the word out, to really engage with the trusted sources and resources to get information to tell the story. But as one who came from the policy space and actually a recovering attorney as well, the goal is not to tell the story for the audiences that kind of have lived and breathed this work. It really is to open the aperture, right? To tell the story to those who actually do care, but they need to see it and hear it differently. And so we want to be able to be that trusted partner or that ally to help to get the story out, get the information out in a way that will be really, will be received, understood, and then can be acted upon.
We are somehow out of time. It's went so quickly. Did I have many more questions? Yes. But did we cover a lot of good stuff? Also, yes. So thank you, everyone, for joining today, for Erika and Mannone. And I also just want to share, Lemonada, we are turning today into a podcast episode. And so you will see we have a table outside with a QR code for you to share your stories if you want to. What brought you to the work? What has impacted you? How do you see success day to day? What gives you hope? We would love to hear from you too, so you can be a part of this work. Thank you all so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.